Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Hey Joe, What You Know. Delighted to be welcomed by Mo Stewart today. Mo's host of the Late Challenge podcast and also is a DJ, journalist. You do loads of different things, Mo. We had a press conference yesterday with Arnie Slot. Welcome to the show. And yeah, just tell us a bit about yourself.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me, first of all. And yeah, you did kind of describe. It's funny, whenever someone describes all the things I do, I always think, wow, that sounds exhausting. And the reality is, yes, it kind of is at times, but it's also loads of fun. I mean, 11-year-old me would have bitten my hands off to be able to do the things I do. As you say, I get to be in the press conferences, I get to ask questions to the Liverpool head coach, which is still wild to me. But yeah, the late challenge on Mondays, the Anfield wrap through the week, my own stuff on Substack and on YouTube, and then a little bit of moonlighting here and there for whoever wants me to come on. So I was doing some BBC Radio 5 live stuff after the game at Villa Park on Wednesday. But yeah, it's fun talking about football. And I think that that's always been the theme throughout my life. And I'm going to continue to talk about football as long as there's people who want to listen to what I say.
Just tell us about the press conferences. So when I know you do your videos for your YouTube channel and the updates of a day of a press conference. So when you go to the press conferences, ask Slot the questions. Who else are you working for as well at that time?
So that's through Talksport International. So Sirius XM Radio in America is my main hub, but I will be collating audio clips from the press conference and sending it off to Talksport International. So a lot of the time they'll use them on their international radio stations. Sometimes I use them on Talksport UK as well. So that's kind of my main aim for being through there. But they're very gracious enough to allow me to do my own thing off the back of that as well. So my press conference reviews, that's really kind of the main job that I'm doing off the back of those. So I've looked at a lot of the time with news and information around Liverpool, it's all about getting out first, getting out quickly. You know, if you wait too long, then suddenly everything's old hat. But the way I try to do it is it's more analysis than news updates. So I'll take a little bit more time, go back, rewatch, have a little bit of a think, and see about what he's really trying to say, or sometimes the things that he doesn't even know he's saying, and tries to kind of give people a little bit of extra information based on my thoughts, my analysis. And so far, it's been great. People have really responded well to it, so I'm happy.
Yeah, it's interesting. And what is Slot like as a character in the presses? What's he like in person?
So I want to be able to tell you that there's some secret news side to Slot that people haven't seen, and you only get to see it if you're privileged enough to be in his presence. No, he is as advertised, just a very calm, funny guy, very measured. Doesn't waste any word. So every time he says something, he means it, and he wants you to know it as well, which I find really refreshing because a lot of times with managers, you can get the impression that they're kind of telling you one thing to avoid telling you something else, whereas he's very straight down the line. And also very happy to talk about football and talk about tactics, which I know some people when he first arrived were a little bit wary of the idea of him kind of letting out all of the straight trade secrets. But managers and coaches don't really see it like that. I think for them, a press conference is an opportunity for them to kind of lay out their manifesto and also to prove to everybody how much they know about football.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if you sort of look at the difference between him and Jurgen's press conferences, what are they like as a sort of entity when you go in there?
So, in fairness to Jurgen, I should probably judge them between Jurgen's first couple of years and Arne Slot at the beginning, because obviously how he was at the beginning and how he was at the end after years of, you know, I wouldn't say being battered down, but years of occasional headlines coming from things that he said or misconstrued and such. And those things do make a difference. The main difference I would say at the moment is the fact that Klopp he was always an honest person to a fault sometimes, and that's probably the main difference. In as much as Arne Slot is aware, I mean he's honest as well, but he's aware when there are things that he probably doesn't need to say. so he won't give the full picture all the time. Whereas Slot would just, he would tell you how much he hates something, even if the opponents might end up using it against him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I can remember a few of those instances. But you can imagine it was a pretty tough job. You know,
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
grueling, grueling job for
I
anybody.
think the other thing that I've noticed from being around it is how much they have to do. And it's not just the ones that we see, obviously, because I work for Talksport International. So I'm aware of how many other international obligations they have, particularly when it's European games, but also just on a normal week to week Premier League game. So pretty much every time I'm going to Kirby for a press conference, before or after, there is a TV company, a radio company setting up to do an interview with him, or maybe one, maybe two, maybe three. So he might have to be talking to four or five, excuse me, four or five different outlets before he comes to talk to us. And then after talk to us, there's the breakout for the written press with the embargo. So on sometimes, if particularly if there's one big thing which is dominating the news game, but for example, the contracts, he may have to answer the same question 7 or 8 times in the space of 2 hours, which, I mean, for anyone who's got young kids, are probably quite used to that. But as an adult, it can be quite jarring.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate that. And then just you mentioned the contracts there, just on the contracts. I mean, there's been a few sort of tweets I've seen flying around saying that Salah's been offered sort of a derisory contract. I mean, I don't know if there's any substance in that, but what are your sort of thoughts on the contract situation? And do you think it's affecting the players at the moment at all in terms of performance?
I don't think it's affecting the players. No, I think it's been going on long enough, and it was happening. There doesn't seem to have been any discernible change from when they were flying and winning 2-3 nil every week to now, where it's a little bit more difficult. I think it sometimes can be something which people want to say, oh, well, obviously that's in the back of their minds. But I think the guys involved are all experienced enough to be able to dissociate between one and the other. And also, let's not forget, they all have agents.
Yeah.
The agents are the ones who are doing most of the legwork. They are free, or should be free, to concentrate on the football. There have been conversations between the players and their agents where they were said, "This is what I want. Now you go get it."
Yeah.
So the reality is that it's their agents who should be stressed at the moment rather than the players, and obviously Liverpool fans who are wanting to get this done. But it's difficult because I try to be as calm and measured about these things as possible. But it's a very emotional, emotive subject when there are players who are clearly still at the very peak of their powers, and there's potential for them to be coming to the end of what's been a fantastic Liverpool career for all three of them.
Yeah.
So you're desperately trying to stave off the next phase, the inevitable, because I mean, Salah and Van Dijk in particular would be extremely difficult to replace, particularly if you're having to do them both at the same time. So you don't want to, it's easy for the emotion to take over. But the reality is, and history will tell you this, sometimes these things don't get sorted until very late in the season. Like, I remember years gone by, Frank Lampard being in a very similar situation to this with Chelsea, and it being sorted in May.
Yeah.
Um, which is probably not good news for everybody's hearts, I'm afraid.
But are
But
you
what I would say is that for those people who believe that for it to be going on still now is only a bad sign, and the longer time goes on, the less likely they are to sign, I would say that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, sure. Use that horrible phrase, trust the process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, as a Philadelphia basketball fan, trust the process as a phrase is banned. So I understand it, but yeah, I also fear it slightly.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Keep this space. I think whatever happens, there's going to be a fairly big summer transfer wise. I'm guessing. I think there's going to be a few ins and outs. Maybe Darwin, got a lot of stick after the Villa game, didn't he? He came out on social media as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I think he's still got a few moments in him. Um, from now until the end of the season, I think that's just the way he is. I think we just got used to it, essentially.
No, I agree. I don't think the Darwin Núñez Liverpool story had its final chapter written. I think there's a few more twists and turns to go. It's difficult because I don't think there's anybody who didn't want it to go really well. And I think you can see whenever the Liverpool play at Anfield and he's on the pitch, there are thousands and thousands of people desperate to cheer his name. Sometimes, even when he does just something really simple and obvious, they want to cheer his name. They want to give him confidence. They want to build him up and hopefully see him fly. But coming towards the end of his third season, and it kind of feels like he's in a worse situation than he was when he started. Now, obviously, tactics between Jurgen Klopp and Arne Slot are different, and you can make an argument to say that Jurgen Klopp tactics suited him better than Arne Slot tactics do. But I do think, as you say, the summer's going to be a big one. Slot is he's nothing if not a fair man, so he would have taken his time to really truly assess everybody in that squad and tell, so he finds out who can and who can't do what he wants. And I do think that this summer will be the time of reckoning for quite a few. Although interestingly enough, he is one of the few people who's got more than 2 years left on his contract. So the other thing that comes into it is that whatever way you look at it, it's going to be a very busy summer for Liverpool.
Yeah, definitely. I think my sort of gripe with him, but in the Wolves game at least, was when he came on, there was really no real work rate. And I found McAllister was almost having to do his job, pushing into the midfield to make those challenges that he should have been doing. And he sort of seemed to take that into the Villa game. I know he missed that chance, but the work rate just didn't seem to be there. I think if he can recapture that, nobody will be getting on his back, despite if any, despite if you miss a chance or two here and there, and then the moments will come. Um, but yeah, City up next, and then we'll. What are your thoughts going into this one? Is it a must-win first of all for Liverpool? This one,
I mean, you're tempted to say so after the draw at Villa Park, but I'm not 100% sure that's the case. I think when you look at the way it goes, if Liverpool don't win it, then they are putting more pressure on themselves. They are making it slightly easier for Arsenal down the stretch. And then if they do win it, then obviously it gives them a massive boost in terms of confidence because there's a lot less games to go. But the reality is that after these two games, after Manchester City, there's only four more away games. And what the rest of them are at home. So seven more home games to come after. And I think for Liverpool, that's where the real must wins are. I think when you consider as well that one of those home games is against the team that's chasing us in Arsenal,
yeah,
I still believe if Liverpool can get 21 points out of 21 and go undefeated in the other four away games or five away games, including Man City, I think that should be enough. But in the context of where we are in terms of the slightly faltering performance in the last two games, the nerves, all of those kind of things, the external voices, the external noise, it would be a lot better for Liverpool if they could get this win on Sunday.
yeah, for sure. I think if it would be a big boost sort of psychologically if they could go there and beat City. I'm not sure which sort of City's going to turn up after the result in Madrid on Wednesday. It was, I'm not sure if you call it a humiliation, but it wasn't a good result and it wasn't a really, it wasn't a good performance by them. The
They
fan.
tapped out,
Yeah,
Joe. They tapped out.
yeah,
They knew that they weren't winning that game, so they decided to not try to win that game. Now that sounds like a very big statement to make, to particularly considering they were only one goal down, and in the era where there's no away goals, a one goal advantage should be more than capable of overcoming. If Liverpool went into the same situation and they were only a goal behind, even against Real Madrid away from home, if they decided that they couldn't win that game, there would be uproar. But that was the performance that we saw, particularly once Real Madrid's got that early goal. But then you could say with Pep Guardiola's team selection, he didn't take any risks on any players who may or may not have been fit.
yeah,
So it's clear that for them, getting back into the Champions League next season is the most important thing. And I can understand a world where he's looked at his team and thought, even if we manage to get through this game, we aren't going to win the next 7 games it takes to win the Champions League this season. But if we are in the Champions League next season, we should still have the armory to be able to go out and buy players to make us better so we can have a better run at it next season. So, from a logical perspective, you can see it and understand it. Unfortunately, what that means is that I'm expecting them to be a lot better against Liverpool on Sunday than they were against Real Madrid on Wednesday. But even within that, I think it's notable that even the games in recent times where City have been lauded and they've played well, they have still been iffy defensively. That improvement has only come at one end of the pitch. When they have the ball at their feet and they can advance towards opponents, they have on occasion looked like their old selves. Every time they've had to defend, whether that be pressing high or whether that just be one-on-one defending or even concentration, they have still looked shaky. And so bad news for Liverpool fans who are maybe wondering about their blood pressure. But I'm expecting another high scoring game on Sunday. But this time, I feel like Liverpool, if they get the same amount of chances that they got against Aston Villa, then I expect them to take more than two.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think with sort of due result at the Etihad, I don't think we've won there since 2015. Might be right. Um, it's yeah, it's going to be a cauldron. We're expecting that, but it's also going to be a cauldron when we welcome Paris Saint-Germain back to Anfield in the
Mm.
Champions League, who Liverpool were drawn with in the last 16 this morning, Friday morning. It's funny, isn't it? Because when we last played PSG, they had the likes of Neymar, all of the big stars, and we beat them. Now, people seem to be more concerned that they're a team that don't have any egos. They're more solid. It's just funny the way football works, isn't it? But we have them second leg at home. I think we've definitely got to be confident going into it. Just, it's the Champions League at the end of the day, and Liverpool know how to perform in the Champions League.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? Because it doesn't really feel like a justified reward for topping the league phase to get a team the quality of PSG. But then I do think that when UEFA were putting this together, they didn't think that there'd be as many quote unquote good teams loitering around the lower reaches as there have been. So it's a bad luck, some you would say, particularly when you consider the way that Barcelona's draw worked out. But they were down there for a reason. So as much as they have had improvement, they have been shaky at times in the Champions League. In terms of the difference between them and now, the last time we played them, that was a collection of superstars. This is a team. And to give them credit, this is what a lot of the Parisian fans have been asking them to do for a long, long time. Concentrate on young, hungry, normally homegrown, but a few stars sprinkled in talent who are desperate to prove themselves and to be able to do what those elite superstars couldn't do, which is take them all the way in the Champions League. Now, they haven't lost any game of any sort since November, which on the face of it is quite worrying. They've also on a 7 game winning streak, which is also worrying. But within that, there haven't been very many tests. I mean, you could say Manchester City, but then we've just spoken about what Manchester City are like. And while they are strong at one end, they are absolutely not at the other. So that has always been the perennial issue for Paris Saint-Germain, is in they've been able to be so serene in their domestic competition that when it comes to ramping it up, the difficulty in the Champions League, they've struggled to reach that level. We'll have to wait and see exactly what this new breed are able to do. But I'll tell you one thing, it's going to be 2 very, very watchable football games.
Yeah, for sure. And then the route to the final, should Liverpool progress, then is we would probably say we've got the more difficult half of the draw
Mm.
overall, potentially Villa and Brugge, and then the semi-finals, should we get there, could be anyone. Atletico, Arsenal. If we get Arsenal, I think we'd be playing them twice in a few days.
Mm.
In terms of the way the fixtures would fall, so that that could potentially be massive.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about that is if we're playing Arsenal, then that's an Arsenal who've just beaten either Atletico or Real Madrid. So they'll be flying. But there's a part of me that feels like we could get two English ties or we could get zero English ties because as much as Aston Villa will fancy themselves greatly against Club Brugge, they have already lost to them this season. So, and yes, it was a really strange circumstances with the Tyrone Mings handball where he had the brain fade. Um, but honestly, I would have loved to have been sitting next to him when that draw came out, by the way, just to see how he felt about it going back there. But I think, yes, for Liverpool, the expectation is that it will be Aston Villa. And I don't think that's a bad thing either, because there will probably be a feeling of a missed opportunity after what happened on Wednesday. And the opportunity to go there and put it right, I think most of them would relish that. So that would be a great opportunity, I think. But then obviously, like you say, Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, Arsenal, one of those, any of those three would be extremely difficult. But I mean, Champions League semi-finals aren't supposed to be easy, are they?
No, they've never been easy over the years, have they?
No, no. Even the ones that were supposedly easy, for example, Villarreal. Um, I still remember us being 2-0 down at half time away in the away leg, and suddenly that didn't look very easy at all. So, or even Roma, where we were 5-2 up after the home leg, and then suddenly in the Stadio Olimpico there was panic everywhere. So I think the idea of Liverpool being able to serenely get through was never really going to be on the cards. And I do think to a certain extent, playing a tough round of 16 against PSG will give them a confidence boost if they're able to overcome it, to remind themselves, hang on a minute, we were the best team in the first phase. We are still a good football team. We beat Real Madrid. Let's not we forget. So I think that the way that the season's going at the moment, they could probably do with another little boost like that. So hopefully Manchester City are beaten on Sunday, then we can go into that Paris Saint-Germain tie with a little bit more confidence and then beat them. And then suddenly the whole path to everything opens up once again.
Yeah, sure. And and if you're winning like that as well, you suddenly forget you're tired, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, very
That,
much so. It's like
that always
tiredness is for
works.
losers, like literally.
Well, what your sort of thoughts on Arsenal? In the they've got West Ham, a depleted West Ham by the looks of it at the weekend, tomorrow afternoon at the Emirates, and then they've got a tough trip away to Forest next Wednesday. So, and obviously a game in hand, which I think is going to be Chelsea
Yes, it is.
at home. So they haven't got easy ties going forward either. Obviously, they've got their striker issues too. They'll have Saka back probably towards the end of the month by the looks of
Mm.
it. So they got players coming back. But what are your sort of thoughts on them and their sort of staying power?
I think it's fascinating, really, because in a lot of ways, the striker issues they would affect nearly every other team more than they affect Arsenal because Arsenal have kind of been making do without a striker for quite some time now. Like obviously Kai Havertz has nominally been playing there, but he's not really what you call a striker. It's not his mo stock in trade. He's very much a false nine, someone doing a job there. So they've kind of got a lot of experience of having to deal with not having strikers. So from that point of view, I don't think it's as big an issue as it could be for someone else. But I do also think that that gives them less margin for error. So if there is an issue with Wanieri or Trossard or even Marino now that he's had 10 minutes up front and suddenly become prime Ronaldo, um, if there's an issue with any of those, then obviously it becomes even more difficult. For the weekend game against West Ham, it's difficult because West Ham have taken quite a few beatings on the face of Arsenal in recent times. And I think what was it, 4-0 at half time in the game, the away game? So they're not going to have much confidence they can go there and cause them trouble. But they've still got to get over the line. They've still got to do the job. And I think that it's going to be nip and tuck with Liverpool and Arsenal. I don't think we're in a situation where we can think that we're gonna the gap's too big and they're gonna falter off. Even the games against Nottingham Forest and the games against Chelsea, if you look at Nottingham Forest now, it's a different prospect than when we went there
Yeah,
off the back of they won 6 games in a row, or Chelsea, who were still thought about as in the title race around the times that we were playing them, and suddenly now are not. But this is a very unpredictable league, so no one is handed anything. People thought that Leicester away would have been an easier game, really, than West Ham at home, and they were 0-0. What was it going into the 80th minute?
yeah, yeah. Last 10.
So,
Hmm.
it's put it this way: it's that stage of the season that can make idiots of all of us.
Yeah,
So they've still got to do the job. I don't think that we're in a situation where Arsenal winning would put any extra pressure on Liverpool going to Man City the day after. However, the flip side, Arsenal not winning might
yeah,
give
yeah,
everybody a little bit more breathing space to be able to say, well, if we do draw this game, it's not the end of the world.
yeah, for sure. Well, let's quickly have a quick sort of look at the Carabao Cup final, which is only a few weeks away now. Newcastle, big day at Wembley. They're desperate for a trophy, the Geordies. What are you, what are your thoughts on looking ahead to that one?
Desperation is a very good way of putting it because they obviously they've been in the final a couple of years ago and they didn't really give a great account of themselves. But they will look at it and say that they were very much handicapped by the fact that they didn't have their first choice goalkeeper. Now, which is just not to say that Loris Karius had a particularly bad game. I don't think he did. But just in terms of your belief in the psychology of the situation, he's not someone who'd been involved. So you're already thinking, we're not at our best. Whereas I do think for them, having had that will make them harder to beat this second time. But the beauty of this is that we do have them in the league on Wednesday.
Yeah,
So any kind of tactical tweaks that need to be realigned, there's a perfect platform to be able to look at them. I do think they're another team who are they have very they have the higher quality players in attack and some in midfield, but defensively, I do think they can be got at. But it's going to be a physical battle.
yeah,
So the signs that Liverpool showed of a bit of raggedness over the last couple of games, they need to have been eradicated by the time we get to that final. Because if it goes 120 minutes, then they will feel like they have the advantage.
yeah. It's an interesting one, isn't it? It's going to be another tense game in amongst tense games. But
There are no, there are so I say this, and I sometimes think that people don't really understand, but every game from now on is going to be tense. There will be no easy games. Some people are thinking about Southampton at home and thinking, well, at least that one will be a nice, easy win. No, it won't. It'll be tense.
what the
And you
point?
know why it'll be tense? Because everyone's going into it assuming it'll be a nice, easy win. And that's just not how football works. You've got to earn the right to get those wins over the line. There might well be some games where Liverpool really turn it on, we go 2-0 up at half time, get a third before the hour mark, and then they can cruise. That still could happen at some point, but you can't expect those. The most thing you're going to expect is what we've seen over the last couple of games, where it's tight every single time a team attacks. It could be the worst thing that's ever happened in your mind. But thankfully, the coaching staff and the players aren't thinking that way. It's just mainly us on the outside. So, as tense as it's going to be for everybody watching, I think we can be calmed down a little bit by the fact that the players themselves aren't quite feeling the same way.
Buckle up, as they say.
Exactly. Exactly.
And just the last one, it's more general one that I ask everyone. Who's your ultimate best favorite ever Liverpool player?
Well, I've answered this question a few times down the years, and there's been a feeling that maybe I should update my answer. But the reality is, I mean, it has to be John Barnes. Still, he's the reason I am a Liverpool fan. And being a Liverpool fan is the reason I'm living in Liverpool. So he's actually had a very large influence on my life. And in recent times, I've actually got to know him personally, which has been a bit surreal, but very enjoyable. Um, and I'm still old enough to remember what he was like on the football field and watching him and how he could do anything. But I will also give a very, very honourable mention to a certain Mr. Mohamed Salah, because I think when we get to the end of his career, whenever that will be, hopefully 2 or 3 years from now, um, he's going to be known as one of the greatest players. We're going to be telling people, yeah, I got to watch peak Salah. I got to see him week in and week out. And yeah, he's going to be responsible for so much joy. And in the same way that John Barnes was the catalyst for a whole generation of Liverpool fans, Mo Salah's going to do exactly the same.
Yeah, definitely. It always annoys me when people say he's one of these players that has awful matches and then turns on the moments. I mean, he might do that sometimes, but he's still fantastic, whatever anyone says.
I mean, I think if you believe that there are players who don't have awful matches, then I don't think you're watching those players enough.
Absolutely. Brilliant, Mo. Well, thanks for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and look out for the Late Challenge podcast. It's really good, great fun with Mo and Gareth Roberts. They're both on Twitter as well, and also both on the Anfield Wrap from time to time. Yeah, we'll see you soon. Please like and subscribe.